ever feel like keeping up with money news or just consumer stuff in general, like crying up about the smoke?
Oh, definitely. Or, how things that seem totally random, like say how phones are being used way out in rural India or, I don't know, Hawaiian cultural traditions.
Yeah. How could that possibly connect to your client or the bigger picture?
Exactly.
Well, welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a pile of sources, articles, research, things you've shared, and we try to cut through that noise.
Yep. Pull out the really important bits, the insights.
Today, we're digging into a specific snapshot. It's based on excerpts from Jun07'25, Consumers 360. Now, this is described as news commentary, and it pulls from the Consumers.App website.
Right. That's an aggregator site, brings together consumer articles and adds some analysis. And this particular batch is dated June 7th, 2025.
So our mission here really is to unpack the key trends and insights from this collection just from that specific day. Help you quickly get a handle on what's important, maybe surprising, or just interesting in this digest.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, first up, we're looking at a global trend highlighted in the source material. This comes from the Financial Express. Headline is Financial Inclusion at the Grassroots. What really grabbed me here is this idea of technology and education, not just like helping, but actively driving financial access.
Yeah.
Specifically in India.
Yeah, and what's genuinely fascinating looking at the consumers' research analysis on this is the real concrete impact mobile financial services are having, right down to individual behavior in India.
How so?
It's not just, I have a bank account now. The data actually shows it makes people more likely to actively invest or get insurance, and crucially, to borrow from formal places like banks.
Instead of like loan sharks or something.
Exactly, instead of those informal, often predatory sources. So it's reshaping some really fundamental financial choices.
Wow, so it's changing basic decisions.
Absolutely. And, a really significant point they highlighted is how it's specifically helping bridge the gender divide in financial access.
Really?
By giving women more direct control, more access through their phones, it's apparently altering some of those patterns of poverty that got worse during the pandemic. It's offering them a pathway to, more financial agency.
Wow. Bridging a gender gap with a phone? That's an impact I wouldn't have immediately thought of. So what makes this work? What are the key things?
Well, the critical factors identified according to the research they cited seem to boil down to a few key things. Digital and financial education are just paramount.
Right. You need the tool and know how to use it.
Precisely. Know how to use it responsibly. Digital literacy in general, and just the speed people are adopting the tech. Those are also huge factors.
And the tech itself, is it just phones or is there more to it?
Mobile tech is definitely central. Things like digital wallets, micro-lending platforms, they're giving a big boost to inclusion, especially out in rural areas where, bank branches are few and far between.
Okay.
But the analysis also points to fintech firms. They're acting as real agents of change here.
How are they managing that?
Well, they're using digital platforms, machine learning, even, large language models, LLMs, to make financial services more accessible for populations that have been traditionally underserved.
So like automating things, assessing risk differently.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Offering potentially more tailored services, getting around some of the old barriers, though, the source does note this fast tech adoption brings its own headaches. Things like data privacy, algorithmic bias, consumer protection. Those are big question marks for a regulator.
Right. Always a flip side. It sounds like the Indian government has been pretty active too.
Oh, crucially active. Initiatives like Pradhan Mantri Danyojana PMJUI Aadhaar, the ID system.
Yeah, the biometric one.
And the Unified Payments Interface, UPI. These have been absolutely foundational. They've dramatically boosted account ownership, made digital payments really common.
So the goal is equal access.
That's the stated goal, yeah. And the research really emphasizes that success hinges on coupling these tools with much better financial literacy. You need both.
Makes sense. But even with all that effort, are there still big challenges, things holding it back?
Definitely. Those financial literacy gaps, they're still there. Just having the app isn't enough if you don't really get the risks or the full potential. Tech infrastructure limits, especially in really remote areas, that's still a hurdle. And kind of surprisingly, sometimes cultural or even religious beliefs can significantly impact financial decisions and whether people adopt these tools. Reaching the most remote people is still tough. And those ongoing regulatory challenges, finding the right balance.
Okay, so taking a step back, thinking about your own financial life, when you see this global push driven by tech and education. How does it make you think about the digital tools you use, your banking app, investment platforms? Does it just feel like, oh, it's convenient? Or does it feel more fundamental, more empowering? It really highlights how something as simple as an app can potentially transform access and behavior on a massive scale.
That's a really good point. Makes you see your own tools differently.
All right, let's shift gears completely now. Our next insight from the Consumers.App aggregator takes us somewhere totally different. This is sourced from Hawaii News Now, via MSN.com.
Okay.
Headline: Nonprofit offers culturally grounded approach to financial education, homeownership for Native Hawaiians. That phrase, culturally grounded, really jumped out at me.
And that's exactly where the key insight is. The source talks about the work of Hawaiian Community Assets HCA. They're a nonprofit, and their role is providing financial education and access to capital that is specifically culturally relevant.
Okay.
And empowering for low and moderate income Native Hawaiian families. They actually weave indigenous teachings and values right into their education and counseling.
So it's not just like translating standard financial advice into Hawaiian. It's deeper.
Exactly. It's fundamentally reshaping how it's taught. The analysis mentions research. There was a study by the Oista Corporation and the Key Bank Foundation that found this kind of culturally relevant education is way more effective.
More effective how?
It doesn't just, tick the box for financial literacy. It genuinely promotes long-term behavioral change because it connects with people's existing worldview, their identity. It makes the lessons feel real, applicable to their lives, makes them stick.
And is this approach, recognized academically?
Yes. The source brings up scholarly insights supporting what they call culturally relevant educational programs, or CRP.
Yeah.
This framework basically confirms that when you incorporate students' cultural backgrounds, it makes the education more engaging, it motivates them, and it deepens understanding, especially for tricky subjects like finance.
Interesting. The source also seemed to touch on broader financial education stuff, like the link between college financial education and how much people earn after graduation. How does that fit in?
Yeah, it seems the Consumers Research Analysis used that point to sort of bolster the general argument about the power of financial education, whatever the context. I mean, sure, things like your parents' income or SAT scores matter for outcomes later on, but the research they noted suggests that college-level financial ed can equip students with better money management skills. And that can potentially impact their career opportunities, their income down the road. It's just another piece of evidence saying that learning how to handle money is important.
Gotcha. So back to the Native community specifically. What are some key parts of these empowerment programs that the source mentions work well?
Well, programs like those from the First Nations Development Institute, often using a curriculum called Building Native Communities, they focus on the practical skills, budgeting, saving, investing, but they frame it all within the context of community growth, thinking about future generations.
Okay, community focus.
Yeah, and they often work through structures called Community Development Financial Institutions, or CDFIs. Like the Center for Native Hawaiian Advancements, CNHA, is mentioned. These places provide tailored access to capital, counseling, right alongside the education. It's a package deal.
So, the bigger picture here. The implication of this culturally grounded approach, it sounds like it goes way beyond just personal finance, doesn't it?
Oh, significantly more. When you integrate these cultural elements, it fosters a stronger sense of identity of community among the people involved. It helps bridge traditional values with modern financial ideas, making the whole thing feel more, authentic, sustainable.
Right.
It's not just about individual bank balances. It's genuinely about strengthening cultural ties and promoting the well-being of the whole community. It treats financial health as part of cultural and social health. They're intertwined.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. So maybe take a second, think about your own financial learning journey. How did you learn about money? Does seeing this approach, where culture and identity are woven right into finance, does it make you reflect on how financial ideas maybe could be taught differently, perhaps to connect more deeply with certain groups, or maybe even with yourself?
It definitely makes you think.
Okay, let's shift again. Another point raised in this June 7th summary from Consumers.App. This one's from Kiplinger via MSN.com. The 3 C's to financial success. A financial planner's guide to build wealth.
The 3 C's. Always sounds catchy.
It does. Though, while the headline says 3 C's, the Q&A analysis from Consumers Research seems to really, zoom in on one in particular. consistency.
And the analysis makes a really strong case for why consistency is maybe the unsung hero of building wealth. It's not about, hitting it big with some massive occasional financial move.
Right, not the lottery ticket approach.
Exactly. It's about the power of those small intentional decisions you make day after day, week after week. Consistent saving, consistent investing, keeping up with your budget, that steady, almost boring accumulation over time. That's what builds wealth much more reliably than trying to time the market or waiting for a windfall.
It's like the compounding effect,
Yeah.
but for your habits, not just your interest rate.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. The analysis also touches on financial literacy again here. It notes that while obviously literacy is essential for making good choices, some recent research suggests that just increasing literacy levels doesn't always automatically lead to more people actually investing or planning for retirement.
Huh. That feels a bit counterintuitive. Why would that be?
Well, the source analysis doesn't really deep dive into the why on that one, unfortunately, but it does highlight that this finding suggests we might need alternative strategies, things beyond just education, to actually get people moving and help them maintain that crucial consistency.
So knowing isn't always doing.
Seems that way. It implies, behavior isn't purely rational, even when people are informed.
Okay. The source also seemed to throw in a point about mergers and acquisitions in banking. That felt like a bit of a jump from personal finance consistency.
It does seem like a bit of a tangent, yeah. But it was included in this specific Consumers Research Digest, so maybe they saw it as another angle on financial strategy, just, at the corporate level.
Oh, okay.
The finding they mentioned basically indicates that bank M&A can significantly impact their capital structure, their financial results, their overall stability, even their commercial prospects. So it's about consistency of performance and strategy, just on a huge corporate scale.
Fair enough. So bringing it back down to us to the personal level, how does strategic consistency show up in other areas, like maybe insurance?
Good question. The source notes how a strategic approach to buying, say, deferred term insurance fits into this consistent long-term planning idea.
How so?
It's presented as a way to consistently hedge against big risks, dying too soon, or even living too long and running out of money. It integrates your income, your spending, your investments, optimizing a strategy that's consistently aligned with your long-term goals. It's not just a one-off purchase, it's a piece of a sustained financial plan.
Right, part of the whole picture. And consistency isn't just about our personal habits. The source applied it to businesses too, didn't it, in their reporting?
Absolutely. Consistency in financial reporting for businesses was highlighted as really critical. It lets them do accurate trending, proper analysis, communicate clearly.
Makes sense.
Consistent reporting lets a business track its performance reliably over time, spot patterns, make informed decisions, and, importantly, it builds transparency and trust with investors, lenders, everyone. Those are principles just as vital for managing your own money.
Okay, so for us personally, what are the big challenges to actually maintaining that consistency? And why should we bother if it's hard?
Well, the main challenge, as the analysis points out, is basically discipline versus the lure of instant gratification, isn't it?
Yeah, the shiny object.
Exactly. Sticking to a plan when there are easier, maybe more immediately fun options, that's tough. But the benefits, that's the why. It's the gradual, stable building of wealth, better financial stability, and actually reaching those long-term goals you set. Consistency provides that really crucial, stable foundation.
Which kind of brings us back around to strategic planning, doesn't it?
It does. Consistent strategic planning is key. It means setting clear goals, figuring out the steps you need to take, and then consistently putting your resources, time, money, effort towards those goals. It's an ongoing process, analytical, but also creative, that helps you adapt to changes while still keeping your decisions aligned with where you ultimately want to go.
So thinking about these C's, and especially that emphasis on consistency from the source, which part of your personal financial habits feels like it could use maybe the most steadying hand, a bit more discipline? It really drives home that those simple, regular habits are the real building blocks.
Definitely food for thought.
Okay, let's move to a topic that's incredibly relevant for probably a lot of listeners right now: retirement. This headline from Florida Today asks a very direct question. Retirement income strategy should align with your goals. But what if you need more income?
Oof, yeah, that question gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? Post-saving, how do you make it last? The Consumers Research analysis really hammers home the absolute necessity of having a tailored retirement withdrawal strategy for long-term stability.
Tailored meaning specific to you.
Exactly. It's all about managing the money you've saved so it matches your lifestyle, your income needs, for however long retirement lasts.
Are there specific ways to do that? Methods the source mentioned?
Yeah, it touches on a few common ones like fixed dollar withdrawals, fixed percentage, or dynamic strategies where you adjust how much you take out based on how the market's doing.
Okay.
But the really critical insight here is that you have to understand your expected expenses, your desired lifestyle before you start taking money out. That's the only way to figure out if your funds can realistically last your lifetime.
The 4% rule always comes up. What did the source say about that one?
Yes, the famous 4% rule. It's mentioned as being really popular because it's simple, right? Withdraw 4% of your initial savings in year one, then adjust that amount for inflation each year after.
And it works.
It's designed to be adaptable, to most market conditions over a typical retirement. But, and this is a big that the analysis points out, it has potential drawbacks. It doesn't automatically account for your individual lifespan. Maybe you live longer than average. Or big market crashes.
Right.
So it could lead to a shortfall if you just follow it blindly without making adjustments along the way. It's really more of a guideline, a starting point, not some kind of guarantee.
It sounds like researchers are trying to find maybe better ways to figure this out, make the decisions more solid.
They are. The source actually mentions some recent research that's trying to incorporate something called age-dependent force of mortality into optimizing retirement decisions.
Okay. Age-dependent force of mortality. That sounds pretty technical. What's the practical idea there?
Right, good point. It does sound intense. Basically, instead of just guessing how long you'll live or using a simple average, this research uses more sophisticated statistical models. They look at mortality patterns based on age, sometimes wealth or health too.
To do what?
To help figure out a more optimized retirement boundary. Basically, informing when it might be financially best to retire and how to allocate your money throughout retirement. The goal is potentially better outcomes, making your funds more sustainable, especially given that we don't know exactly how long we'll live or what the market will do. Think of it less like picking a single end date and more like using smarter data to build a more flexible financial runway.
Okay, a smarter runway. That makes sense. And taxes. Surely taxes are a huge piece of retirement income.
Oh, massive. And the source really highlights this. Having a tax-efficient withdrawal strategy can significantly stretch how long your portfolio lasts.
How does that work?
The insight is that by strategically choosing which accounts you pull money from first, like do you take from your traditional IRA first, which is taxed when you withdraw, or your Roth IRA where withdrawals are tax-free, or your regular taxable brokerage account?
The order matters.
The order matters a lot. By planning that sequence, you can potentially spread out your tax burden over many years, reduce the total amount you pay in taxes over your lifetime, and actually increase the amount of spendable income you have each year.
So deciding where the money comes from first, that's a really key decision point then.
Absolutely critical, yeah. When you're deciding which assets to tap first, you've got to weigh the different tax implications, think about your immediate income needs versus future needs, and consider the long-term health of your whole portfolio. Looking at how different withdrawal sequences affect your financial health and how long your funds might last, that's vital.
The source also mentioned pre-retirement. That's kind of a newer idea for some people.
Yeah, pre-retirement, it reflects a shift away from that old idea of just, boom, stopping work completely on a Friday and being fully retired on Monday.
Right.
The source describes it more as people gradually reducing their work hours or maybe shifting to less demanding work instead of a full stop. It offers a more flexible transition.
What's the benefit?
Well, you maintain some income, which eases the financial pressure. It extends your earning potential, lets you delay drawing down heavily on your retirement savings. It basically contributes to a more sustainable financial bridge into what you might call full retirement.
That's a really interesting way to manage that transition. Okay, so thinking about all these different strategies, tailoring withdrawals, knowing the limits of rules like 4%, tax efficiency, even pre-retirement, how does thinking about this stuff change your perspective on the saving you're doing right now? It really highlights that it's not just about hitting some magic number, is it? It's just as much about the strategy for how you'll eventually use that money.
Absolutely. The decumulation phase is just as important as the accumulation.
All right, finally, we have a very specific, numbers-driven scenario that was posed in the source material. This one came from 24/7 Wall St. on MSN.com.
Okay.
The headline literally asks, I am planning to retire at age 66 with $800 in my IRA and $2,900 a month from Social Security. Is this possible? I mean, that's a question a lot of people probably ask themselves in some form.
It's super practical, yeah. And the Consumers Research Analysis breaks it down. The key starting point they mention is understanding full retirement age, or FRA in the U.S. system.
Right. That's when you get your full benefit.
Exactly. It's usually between 66 and 67, depends on when you were born. That's when you get 100% of your calculated Social Security benefit. And a really critical planning piece mentioned is that if you delay claiming past your FRA up to age 70, your monthly payout gets significantly bigger.
Okay, so for this person in the headline, retiring at 66, how does that specific mix the $800K IRA plus $2,900 a month from Social Security? How does that stack up?
Okay, so at age 66, which is likely their FRA, we're very close to it, that $2,900 a month from Social Security combined with potential withdrawals from an $800K IRA, using something like the 4% rule as a rough guide for the IRA part. That gets you to around $5,567 a month before taxes, mind you.
Okay, $5,567 a month pre-tax. So is it possible?
And here's the crucial insight from the analysis. Whether that's possible, whether it's enough, entirely depends on whether that specific amount of income can comfortably cover that individual retiree's lifestyle needs and expenses for the rest of their life.
Right. It's totally personal.
Totally. If it's not enough, the analysis suggests the necessary next steps are things like delaying retirement, adjusting the planned lifestyle, or, very importantly, consulting a financial advisor for a personalized plan.
Are there, general trends the source noted for people around that age nearing 66 these days?
Yeah, some trends mentioned include people increasingly looking at ways to maximize their Social Security, often by delaying their claim past FRA, also optimizing their withdrawal strategies from IRAs or 401ks, and sometimes considering part-time work maybe for a few years to bridge an income gap or just supplement things.
So trying to make the numbers work.
Basically, yeah. The focus is on ensuring a steady, sufficient income stream, but one that also considers their expected lifespan and, critically, healthcare costs, which are huge unknowns for many.
So beyond just having the $800K and the $2,900, what are some practical strategies someone in that boat could use to maybe boost their financial readiness based on what the source said?
Well, key strategies highlighted include things like applying a withdrawal rule, maybe the 4% rule, to that IRA just to help model how long it might last, making sure their investments are appropriately diversified to manage risk as they enter retirement. Yeah. And as we just mentioned, seriously considering delaying Social Security claims to lock in that higher monthly benefit for life. And the analysis consistently points towards talking to a financial advisor for a plan tailored specifically to them.
How big a deal is delaying Social Security? Does it really make that much difference?
Oh, it makes a substantial difference. For every year you delay claiming benefits past your full retirement age up to age 70, your monthly benefit permanently increases because of these delayed retirement credits.
So it's not trivial.
Not at all. It can provide a significantly higher monthly payment for the rest of your life. That can really enhance your long-term financial security, especially when it's combined with income from savings like that IRA.
And what's the specific role of that $800K IRA for someone retiring at 66? How does the analysis see that piece?
That IRA is seen as absolutely critical. It's viewed as the flexible fund that supplements Social Security. It helps manage income flow from year to year.
Okay.
It's also subject to required minimum distributions, RMDs eventually, which have to be factored into the plan. But it offers potential for continued tax-deferred growth, at least in the early retirement years, and provides that vital source of funds to cover needs that Social Security alone might not meet. It gives a much more stable financial footing.
Okay, so beyond just the income numbers, what other really key things does someone in this scenario have to think about when figuring out if their savings are actually enough?
The analysis lists some crucial factors, definitely. Things like their expected lifespan, considering personal health, family history, likely healthcare costs, which, again, huge variable, the impact of inflation eroding buying power over potentially decades.
Right.
Their desired lifestyle expenses, travel, hobbies, supporting family, and the potential need and cost of long-term care down the road. A really thorough evaluation covering all these bases, ideally with professional help, is pretty essential to truly know if those savings are sufficient.
Wow, that really puts that specific scenario into a much broader context. It makes you think. If you were the person asking that question, looking at those numbers, $800K, $2,900 a month, age 66, and knowing all those variables, what's the very first question you would ask yourself? About your own situation, your expenses, your goals, maybe something unexpected. It really forces you to confront your personal reality.
It really does. It's not just about the math.
And well, that brings us to the end of this particular deep dive, digging into these insights from the Consumers.App aggregator's June 7th, 2025 news commentary.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. From global financial inclusion being reshaped by technology and how that's even affecting things like gender equality to the powerful impact of weaving culture right into financial education.
Yeah, and the maybe less glamorous but foundational importance of just plain consistency in building wealth, even when it's tough.
Right. And then the nuances of retirement withdrawal strategies and even breaking down that very specific practical retirement readiness question.
It's pretty amazing, actually, how pulling these different threads together from various sources covering different topics can give you a much clearer, sort of more textured picture of the consumer trends and the personal finance stuff shaping our world right now.
Yeah, it really can. So thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
And maybe building on everything we've touched on today, technology's impact on global access, the very personal, cultural side of finance, the long game of consistent planning, maybe raises a bigger question for you to think about. In a world where finance is becoming more and more digital, yet it's still fundamentally driven by human behavior and values, how do you personally navigate that blend? The mix of technical tools, behavioral hurdles, and your own personal values to build the finance.
That's a great question to ponder. And just one final note, this comes straight from the source material we were discussing today, the Consumers 360 News Commentary. It mentioned that they encourage listeners to like, share, and subscribe to 360 to get more insights like these directly from them. So that's a detail from the source itself.